what? Don't touch my belongings.
They get more shit than you have.
It's horrible. I mean, the weather's...
Broke my leg about November 5th of last year, and I was in a nursing home. I had to learn how to walk all over again, and when I got out, I lost my apartment, lost everything I had.
In Alaska, a vast yet sparsely populated state, homelessness is more than just a statistic. It's a profound struggle against nature's harshness and societal failures. With approximately 3,000 homeless individuals in Anchorage, the crisis, while smaller than in larger cities, is compounded by Alaska's extreme climate and isolation.
Well, my story is that I was an average American with 6 to 8 credit cards, had a home, boat, truck, camper, snow machine, trailer, and I thought that I could just go out and buy a duplex and rent out the basement. Well, I come home a certain day, which is the day, Pearl Harbor Day, and my basement was full of 8 inches of sewage. At that point, I was basically forced into homelessness because the fire department shuts off your heat and electricity, and there's no place to go. And I thought that Anchorage would help me. I kept using my credit cards to make my payments. I couldn't rent it out anymore. It turned into such a big ball that I had to walk away from my house, credit cards, and everything. And I'm a carpenter in the Carpenters Union for 28 years, hoping to get my retirement, struggling day by day at soup kitchens and food banks, hoping for milk and hoping to better myself and others, and to awaken everyone that the problem that this fine country is having right now.
Mark's story exemplifies this reality. Once a homeowner, carpenter, and property owner, his life was upended when his basement flooded with sewage, forcing him to abandon everything. Now, a former carpenter of 28 years, Mark depends on soup kitchens and holds on to hope for a better future. His story highlights the unique challenges faced by Alaska's homeless population. This video delves into the complexities of homelessness in Alaska, examining its causes, the hurdles in addressing the issue, and the small efforts being made to help, all while linking back to the larger crisis of homelessness across the nation. In Alaska, the vast, icy landscapes conceal a profound human crisis: homelessness. Anchorage, the state's urban core with roughly 330,000 residents, bears the brunt of this issue, with an estimated 3,000 individuals, about 0.9% of the city's population.
The city's
without
policy's
shelter.
got to change about the homeless.
While this figure may seem small compared to the national homeless crisis in America, which saw 771,480 individuals reported homeless in 2024, it holds a deeper weight in Alaska, a state with only 731,545 residents spread across 1.7 million square kilometers. Every case resonates profoundly, amplified by the state's isolation and brutal climate. Unlike the sprawling encampments in cities like Los Angeles, Alaska's homelessness is concentrated in Anchorage, where nearly half of the state's population resides. In rural areas, where sparse communities and nomadic traditions among Alaska natives prevail, fewer visible cases are reported, but this scarcity often reflects underreporting rather than absence. Alaska's low population density, less than 1 person per square kilometer, obscures the crisis in remote regions, where access to services is nearly non-existent.
We've been here almost 5 years. Like, why are you guys wanting to evade us now when it's 5 years later?
For those without shelter, the stakes are life or death. With winter temperatures plunging as low as negative 40 degrees Celsius, survival becomes a daily battle against both the elements and poverty. Alaska's homeless population is diverse, reflecting the state's cultural mosaic. Alaska natives, comprising Eskimo, Aleut, Tlingit, and Haida communities, are disproportionately affected, dealing with the long-lasting impacts of historical disenfranchisement and economic marginalization. Immigrants, particularly those of Hispanic descent, about 5.5% of the population, also face heightened vulnerability due to language barriers and limited social support networks. These groups, often overlooked in national conversations about homelessness in America, highlight the unique demographic challenges specific to Alaska. Nationally, homelessness affects 23 per 10,000 people, but Alaska's lower rate masks the severity of the issue. In Anchorage, the 0.9% homelessness rate still translates to thousands enduring sub-zero temperatures with few shelter options. Unlike dense urban centers, Alaska's vast distances and harsh winters restrict aid delivery, forcing many to rely on makeshift camps or temporary shelters. Although the raw numbers are smaller, this crisis demands urgent attention as the state's environment turns homelessness into a battle against both societal neglect and nature's unforgiving forces. How does a small population bear such a heavy burden under these extreme conditions? As I reflect on homelessness in Alaska, I'm struck by the cruel irony of a land so rich in resources, yet so unforgiving.
Just a little cubby hole, you know.
Alaska is brimming with oil, gas, and fisheries. But for many, these resources remain a distant promise, overshadowed by a cost of living that feels like a slow, relentless chokehold. In Anchorage, where the state's pulse beats strongest, housing prices have soared beyond reach, driven by the demand.
The notice I received is that this July 1st, my rent is increasing by $100, and that applies to all the tenants in the park. Come this January, rent will be increased another $100, so we'll end up at $800. It will be by $200 the most expensive mobile home park in Anchorage.
Inflation only worsens the situation, leaving wages far behind. For Alaska natives and immigrants, particularly those of Hispanic descent, a single misstep, a lost job, an unexpected medical bill can push them toward the abyss of homelessness. It's a stark reminder of how fragile stability can be. The climate here isn't just harsh, it's a merciless adversary. Winters, stretching from October to April, cloak Alaska in darkness and sub-zero cold, with temperatures sometimes plunging to negative 40 degrees Celsius. This isn't merely uncomfortable, it's soul-crushing. The endless nights and biting frost worsen mental health struggles, weaving despair into the very fabric of poverty. I can't help but wonder, how does anyone endure such relentless conditions without a home to shield them? For those already teetering on the edge, the environment itself becomes a trap, amplifying their vulnerability. Beneath this, there are deeper wounds, socioeconomic scars that stretch across generations. Alaska natives, a vibrant part of the state's identity, face systemic barriers rooted in history, including limited access to education, jobs, and healthcare. Immigrants, including the 5.5% of the population of Hispanic descent, struggle with language barriers and threadbare social safety nets. Adding to this, environmental challenges such as ocean acidification and dwindling fish stocks are eroding coastal communities' livelihoods. As fishing, a lifeline for many, falters, families slip deeper into poverty, and homelessness looms ever closer. It's heartbreaking to see nature and neglect working together to conspire against the most vulnerable. Worst of all, Alaska lacks the infrastructure to catch those who fall. Unlike states with robust shelter networks, Alaska's vast distances and scarce resources leave many without refuge. For example, the Bay Area shelters only 33% of its homeless population, and Alaska likely fares no better. This perfect storm of economic hardship, a brutal climate, and systemic gaps creates a crisis that feels both inevitable and unconscionable. What does it say about us when we allow thousands to face such overwhelming odds alone? As I reflect on homelessness in Alaska, I'm struck by a haunting realization. Surviving without a home here is not just a struggle for shelter, but a desperate fight against nature's wrath and society's indifference. The state's rugged terrain mirrors the formidable obstacles its homeless endure. Winter temperatures, plunging to a bone-chilling -40 degrees Celsius or lower, turn every day into a grueling battle against frostbite, hypothermia, and even death. The long, inky black winters, stretching from October to April, weigh heavily on the soul, amplifying feelings of isolation and despair. Without shelter, each night becomes a perilous gamble with survival. How could anyone withstand such merciless darkness and cold without refuge? Compounding these environmental challenges are cultural and linguistic barriers. Alaska's vibrant mosaic, home to indigenous peoples speaking Eskimo Aleut and Nadine languages, alongside Spanish-speaking immigrants, requires culturally attuned support systems. Yet, tragically, services often assume English fluency, leaving many stranded in a sea of miscommunication. Cultural insensitivity deepens this divide, cruelly pushing Alaska natives and immigrants to face the unforgiving streets alone. This heart-wrenching disconnect highlights the gaps in addressing homelessness in America, where help exists but often fails to reach those most in need. Alaska's immense vastness, spanning a staggering 1.7 million square kilometers, imposes a crushing sense of isolation. Rural communities, scattered like faint stars across an endless night, are often unreachable, particularly when ferocious winter storms ground flights and block roads. For aid workers, these insurmountable barriers are soul-crushing, leaving countless individuals without hope of rescue. Even in Anchorage, where aid is more accessible, shelters are woefully scarce, forcing people into flimsy tents or makeshift camps that offer little protection against the bitter cold. This stark reality exposes the devastating shortfall in the state's urban core. Furthermore, environmental changes cast a dark shadow over this crisis. Coastal communities, once the lifeblood of Alaska's fishing economy, are now reeling from the impacts of ocean acidification and dwindling fish stocks. These aren't just ecological setbacks. They're existential threats that unravel livelihoods and plunge families deeper into poverty and homelessness. In a state where survival and nature are inseparable, these environmental shifts hit with brutal force, significantly contributing to the growing homelessness crisis. What does it say about a place when the very land seems to conspire against its people? These challenges are profoundly daunting and demand urgent action we cannot afford to ignore. Despite the overwhelming challenges, there are glimmers of hope in the ongoing efforts to combat homelessness in Alaska. The state and federal governments have launched programs aimed at providing housing and support, though these initiatives often fall short due to limited resources. In Anchorage, where the crisis is most visible, local authorities have focused on expanding temporary shelters and offering subsidies to help low-income families afford rent. However, these measures are like drops in a vast frozen ocean, insufficient to meet the growing demand. The high cost of construction in Alaska, combined with the logistical challenges of building in remote areas, makes affordable housing a distant dream for many. Community organizations and nonprofits are stepping in where government efforts falter. Groups like the Ocean Foundation work to support coastal communities affected by environmental changes, such as declining fish stocks due to ocean acidification. By strengthening the economic foundation of these communities, such initiatives indirectly reduce the risk of homelessness. Programs that provide job training or access to sustainable fishing practices help families stay afloat, preventing the slide into poverty that often precedes life on the streets. Yet, these efforts remain scattered and underfunded, leaving gaps that desperation often fills. Religious organizations also play a vital role in addressing homelessness. Groups like the Vincentian Missionaries are quietly but tirelessly reaching out to Alaska's homeless, especially among Hispanic immigrants and Alaska natives. They provide food, medical visits, and pastoral care, offering not just material support, but also a sense of dignity and community. However, these missions face their own struggles: harsh weather, language barriers, and the sheer distance between communities make their work a labor of love and endurance. I can't help but wonder, how much can these small acts of kindness truly change in the face of such a vast problem? Local initiatives in Anchorage are making strides as well. Temporary shelters, though limited, provide critical refuge during the brutal winter months. Some programs focus on connecting homeless individuals with healthcare and job opportunities, aiming to break the cycle of poverty. For Alaska Natives, culturally sensitive programs that respect traditional ways of life are slowly emerging, offering hope for communities long marginalized. Still, the scale of the crisis demands more funding, more shelters, and more comprehensive strategies that address the root causes, not just the symptoms. What stands out in these efforts is their heart, but also their fragility. Alaska's unique geography and climate require innovative solutions, such as mobile outreach units that can navigate snowy roads or partnerships with indigenous leaders to reach remote villages. Without such creativity and commitment, the state risks leaving its most vulnerable residents to fend for themselves in a land that offers little mercy. The question remains, what will it take to scale these efforts into a system that truly protects every Alaskan? To truly grasp the weight of homelessness in Alaska, we must compare it to the broader, sobering landscape of homelessness in America, a crisis that pulses through every corner of the nation, yet takes on a uniquely brutal form in the last frontier. According to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's 2024 report, a staggering 771,480 Americans were homeless, marking an 18% increase from the previous year. This equates to roughly 23 homeless individuals per 10,000 people across the country, underscoring the depth of this national crisis. In Anchorage, Alaska's urban heart, the number is lower, about 3,000 people, or 0.9% of the city's 330,000 residents. But don't be fooled by the numbers. The raw data masks a harsher reality. In Alaska, homelessness isn't just a social failing. It's a life or death battle against an unforgiving environment. As I reflect on this, I can't help but wonder, how does a crisis so universal in its roots manifest so differently in a place like Alaska? Nationwide, homelessness is a tapestry woven from familiar threads: skyrocketing housing costs, stagnant wages, and a social safety net frayed to the breaking point. Cities like Los Angeles, New York, and Seattle bear the brunt of the crisis, with sprawling encampments and overwhelmed shelters creating a grim picture. Black Americans, who face systemic inequities rooted in history, are disproportionately affected, as are families with children, who often fall through the cracks of underfunded welfare systems. In these urban centers, the sheer volume of need, hundreds of thousands without homes, creates a kind of chaotic urgency. Shelters, when they exist, are often stretched to their limits. In California's Bay Area, for example, only 33% of the homeless population can access a bed on any given night. The result is a vicious cycle. People are pushed onto the streets, where mental health struggles, addiction, and despair take even deeper root. In Alaska, however, the crisis takes on a different hue, shaped by isolation, climate, and cultural complexity. While the national homelessness rate is higher, Anchorage's 0.9% figure feels deceptively small until you consider the broader context. Alaska's population is sparse, just 731,000. 545 people spread across 1.7 million square kilometers, making each case of homelessness stand out like a lone figure against a vast, snowy horizon. Moreover, the state's homeless population is uniquely diverse. Alaska Natives, Eskimo, Aleut, Tlingit, and Haida communities carry the weight of historical trauma, from forced displacement to economic marginalization, making them disproportionately vulnerable to homelessness. Immigrants, particularly those of Hispanic descent, who make up about 5.5% of the state's population, face additional barriers, such as language difficulties and limited access to services. This diversity demands tailored solutions, yet Alaska's resources are stretched thinner than those of mainland cities. As a result, the state's homelessness crisis, though smaller in scale, feels intensely personal, a stark reminder of systemic gaps in a land that demands resilience. What sets Alaska apart most dramatically is its environment. In cities like Miami or San Diego, homelessness means enduring discomfort, heat, rain, or social stigma. In Alaska, it means facing life-threatening conditions. Winters here stretch from October to April, with temperatures plunging to negative 40 degrees Celsius or lower, sometimes reaching the bone-chilling record of negative 62.2 degrees Celsius. The long, dark months amplify psychological strain, fostering a despair that can feel as suffocating as the cold. Unlike urban centers where makeshift tents might suffice, surviving an Alaskan winter without shelter is a life-or-death gamble. This brutal reality makes Alaska's crisis not just another chapter in the national homelessness problem, but a uniquely perilous one in the story of homelessness in America. Moreover, Alaska's geographic isolation exacerbates the challenge in ways that the mainland rarely sees. In densely populated states, outreach programs can reach thousands within a single city block. In Alaska, however, communities are scattered across vast distances, and rural areas, home to many Alaska Natives, are often cut off by blizzards or impassable terrain. Flights to remote villages where aid might be delivered are frequently canceled due to weather, leaving vulnerable individuals stranded. Even in Anchorage, the state's primary hub, shelters are woefully scarce. Compare this to cities like Chicago, where shelters, though overcrowded, are at least centralized. In Alaska, the lack of infrastructure isn't just an inconvenience. It's a structural failure that leaves people exposed to the harsh element. As I reflect on this, I'm struck by a haunting question. Why does a nation as wealthy as America allow such disparities to persist, whether in the crowded streets of Los Angeles or the frozen wilds of Alaska? The answer lies partly in priorities. Nationally, housing crises compete with other urgent issues, and in Alaska, the immense cost of building infrastructure in a remote, harsh climate diverts funds from social services. Yet, this comparison reveals a universal truth. Homelessness thrives where systems fail the most vulnerable. In Alaska, those failures are magnified by nature's cruelty, making the fight for solutions not just a policy challenge, but a moral imperative. Conclusion. In Alaska, homelessness is a quiet tragedy, unfolding against a backdrop of icy winds and endless winters. The state's 3,000 homeless individuals, largely concentrated in Anchorage, face not only economic hardship, but also the unrelenting forces of nature. Efforts to provide relief through government programs, community outreach, and religious missions are heartfelt but ultimately insufficient. While Alaska's struggle may be smaller in scale compared to the national crisis, its impact is far fiercer. Moving forward, we must not only build more shelters, but also address systemic inequities and innovate solutions tailored to this unforgiving frontier.